Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining us here today on Her Version. I have an amazing guest speaker with us today, Ashely Bertsch. Ashely is a writer, a podcaster, nature enthusiast, and a stepmom. She is here today to talk about some of the challenges she has gone through in her life and how she was able to heal and come out on the other side as a better person. We are going to shed some light on codependency, parenting, and the difference between an abusive and a healthy relationship. Welcome, Ashely.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to chat.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing really well. It's can't really complain. So
That's awesome. Well, I know that you are a busy woman, so I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down with all of us and share some of the inner workings of your journey that you've been through in your life in order to kind of help and inspire females out there that are possibly dealing with the same stuff you've gone through and could use some inspiration and some light shed on their situation and how to deal with it by getting some advice from you. So one of the things that I love to do is to kind of, backstep a little bit and kind of just get an overview of, who you were when you were a little younger, your childhood years, your teenage years. Do you mind kind of sharing with us what that looked like?
yeah, sure. So growing up, I had a sister who was younger than me, so she is 2 years younger, and my parents are together still. So I got to have the ideal relationship with family, but it was a lot of, we spent a lot of time together. We went on trips together. We were very close up until my teenage years. When I became a teenager, I really reverted into myself and I bottled up my emotions and I was feeling very not wanted and that I wasn't important. And this was kind of when my sister got into getting straight A's, being on sports teams. And so my parents were very much involved with her. So I didn't really feel I had that support. I mean, I'm sure they did support me and thought they were doing great, but it was a tough one for me. And then I started trying to find attention elsewhere. And I had a group of friends and we all kind of hung out a lot. And there was one guy that I got involved with who really destroyed me at 16. And it sounds sad because 16 is so young, and I basically lost my relationship with my family. I became depressed and suicidal and dependent on someone who used me. So I struggled through my childhood and ended up using that feeling and emotion to latch on to someone who I thought could give me the attention and support I wanted.
Yeah, I can actually totally relate to that. And it's so interesting now being on the other side of things and now being the mom to kids and having that in our head as far as like wondering, the things that we're doing or not doing that are possibly causing these same exact feelings that we went through growing up. And our parents weren't necessarily doing it to us on purpose. It's just how we felt it was going on. So I totally relate to that. I want to dig into, your relationships that you had in your early years, as far as 16 to, 20s or whatever, and how that looked for you, because I know that you dealt with some abuse pretty early on. You kind of just mentioned the one. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I started dating this guy when I was 15, and it was, I thought he was going to save me. He was going to be the one I was going to marry at 15, 16, which thinking about it now is crazy, and I'm really glad I didn't marry him. But it was basically like we had this small group of people and we all kind of hung out, and I ended up attaching myself to one of them. And it was really nice in the beginning, we did things together, we had fun, he would protect me, he would be there for me. And then kind of, I don't know, maybe a year and a half into it, it started to get less good. It was emotionally and mentally abusive. It started out that way where I had a vehicle, I had a job, I had my life in my mind together. I was doing well in school, I wasn't skipping. And he basically, when he wasn't at school, he'd be at home and he'd make me come to his house after I was off school or work and I had to show up there. He basically made me feel like I needed to be there, otherwise he was going to get mad at me, or accuse me of something. And so it started in my head like, okay, I got to be there every moment I have, I need to be there. And it was very much a dependency on him, even though he was depending on me because I would pay for everything, I would drive us everywhere, but I felt this was what love was in a way. And so eventually it ended up becoming physical. And it was to the point where if I wasn't doing something he wanted, he would hit my head against the wall, or he would hold me down, or he one time threw me down the stairs of his house and his parents were home and his parents did nothing. And
wow.
I remember, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't have heard that, but it was like, oh, okay, I guess I have literally no real support in this house. And then it was to the point where I was just like, I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want anyone to know what was going on. I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know, I was always like, oh, it's fine. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. And so I made excuses. And then I started basically not talking to my family at all. I would show up at home and I'd hide in my room, and it ended up getting really scary at one point. And I remember a lot of my mind frame was, I'm better off dead. I'm better off not in this world. I don't know how I could ever get away from him.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I mean, I didn't really see it that way in the time. I was just kind of like, oh, I'm just sad. I'm just so sad and I don't understand why. And it was like I couldn't feel what I needed to feel and understand why. I had to really bottle it up. And that was really where my bottling of emotions and feelings came to a head. Was like my family would just cry. They'd just be like, come back to us. Where are you? Like, we know you're in there. Like, it was really hard. And I remember one night, I don't remember how it happened or why, but I in my head was going to hurt myself and I was going to end it because that felt like the only option, rather than telling my parents what was going on, because I was too scared for the judgment that was going to come from them. And I was in the bathroom and I was just sitting there with a razor ready to cut my wrists, and my mom was on the other side of the door banging in saying, let me in, let me in. And that was really hard. That was really hard to be a part of. And I realized, like, if I wasn't here, it would be more of an impact on my family and my friends who cared. And that kind of got me out of it. If my mom would have left, like, even though I told her to go away, my mom would have left that door, I don't know what would have happened. And she sat with me and she didn't leave. And finally I let her in and she gave me a hug. And that's when I knew that it was time to figure out a way to get out of this, because it wasn't just destroying me, it was destroying my family.
100%. 100%. How did you wind up? Because there's so many young girls who are dealing with this right now and are feeling the same exact way. How did you do it? How did you break things off? How did you start the conversation? What did it look like?
Well, funny enough, it didn't come for about a year after. So I was with him for 4 years. And it was really hard to have the courage to break it off. And basically, I slowly just stopped going around to his house. I started reaching out to my friends and getting that support there. So, like, when I felt like that I needed to go there, I could say, like, hey, give me a distraction, or hey, can I come over, and just avoid going there. And then eventually, eventually down the road, it came to be known that he was actually cheating on me with somebody in about an hour away from where we lived. And he had been doing that for 6 months. And I had no idea. Yeah. And I felt, at that point, finding that out, I felt very thrown away, like trash, like I wasn't worth anything, because he would tell me every day, no, you're never going to find better than me. You're ugly. You're fat. You're not worth it. And so when you hear that and then he goes and finds someone else and then you're by yourself, you're like, oh, meanwhile, not realizing it was a great thing that he ended up doing that. But he would still, for years after, reach out to me and say, hey, come hang out with me. Let's hook up. And I'm like, you have a girlfriend. And so even when he got married, he still reached out to me, the same girl he married. And he reached out to me and was like, hey, let's hook up. And I'm like, no, like, delete, block, go away. So it wasn't a necessarily like clean break on my end. It was ending up that we were fighting a lot more, and he just found somebody else and moved on, and for an extent, and then tried to come back, and I was with someone else by that time.
Yeah.
And so it was a good thing. So
yeah. So after that relationship and you kind of seen the inside look of what a not so healthy, because at that age you don't really know. You're just kind of like, he's bad. You don't really understand exactly the depth of what you were dealing with. But were you kind of self-aware enough at that point to not get into another relationship like that? Or have you endured other relationships that were similar?
I think the hardest thing is in the beginning, you don't necessarily know. You don't know them. You don't know how they are in relationships. You don't know their secrets. You don't know what their past has been like. You can only go off of what they tell you. So I find that, after that relationship, I was so damaged. I just was like, anybody who gives me attention, I will just accept it, because I was so broken from feeling not good enough for someone who was actually harming me. And it was like, okay, well, I'll move on to somebody else. Like, let's just take my mind off of it. So I never really healed. I never really did the work. I was young and naive, and I was like, let's just find someone else. And so the next relationship I went into was another 4-year relationship that started out good. We were in a good group of friends. He had a job. He had a vehicle. Like, he was doing all right. And I was doing my thing, and we ended up moving in together. And that's kind of when things changed. When we lived together, he chose to not work. I don't know how that was a thing, but as soon as we got a place together, he's like, I don't need to work. So he didn't work. He laid around all day. And then when I came home at night, like around 9 o'clock, him and all his buddies were there. And then they'd just all leave as soon as I got home. And then he'd stay out all night. And then I'd wake up and he'd be just coming in.
Wow.
And so, yeah. And it was like, I became very resentful to the point of like, I would have attitude towards him without saying anything, because I was like, well, I'm too scared to say anything. So I'm just gonna, let him know that I'm not happy about it. And so then I guess I went into my broken shell of hiding and not really trying to work on the relationship. And he became emotional and mentally abusive. And he was bringing like drugs around the house, which was a no-no for me. And he wasn't respecting any of my boundaries, but I also wasn't understanding how to place boundaries in front of people. Exactly. So in the end, he ended up going to work in a different province in Fort McMurray. I don't know if you know that. It's just basically an oil town. So he went and lived there and was there for 6 months. And then I found out he was dating someone else. in that time frame that he moved there. And I was like, okay. And so he broke up with me, and I still tried to get him back. I don't know why. It was just like another failed that's 8 years of my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, we can fix this. We can fix this. And we had like a dog together. And I mean, he didn't really care about the dog, so it wasn't a big ordeal. He didn't really come back from that province. So we just kind of ended things. And I felt very broken after that. I was like, okay, I guess 4 years is the max that I'm ever going to be with anyone. And I basically went deep, and I was like, I'm just going to push everybody away and put all my walls up. And then I ended up moving away from home and everywhere, because everywhere reminded me of these two relationships, because it's a small town. And so it was just a lot to see all the time. So I moved provinces, and that was a big help for me, but I still struggled with relationships. Pretty much all my relationships have been a struggle. I find that I'm such a people pleaser, giving person, that I want to believe the best in people. Yeah. And I realized recently I've been doing a lot of work on myself and digging deep and trying to heal from a lot of the wounds that I've had. And I've realized a couple of things. And one of them was that I was dating people to get attention. Like, I wanted their full attention.
Are these people older than you, by the way? Somebody's asking if they're older than you.
No, they were around the same age or younger. I didn't really date older. None of the people I was around was older. There was one person I dated, and he was like maybe 2 years older, so not like super old. But I went through a lot of different people, and one of them was a big one for me. It was a huge trigger, and he was someone I was like, so I always thought I needed to go less than me, like not less, I want to say that, like somebody who needed help or support, or, you know, someone to guide them. I was wanting to help people, so I was like, that's perfect. I'll find someone who needs some support or help. Most guys don't like that, I've learned. And so I didn't ever date up. Like, I didn't date someone who I was like, oh, he's out of my league. I didn't think that I could have someone out of my league, because my level of my confidence and stuff was so low. So I was like, anyone above that is just gonna feel disappointed with me. Like, it was a lot of me stuff. And so I dated this guy who was a level up, in my opinion. And he was great. We dated for 3 months. It was really awesome. And I felt like I had someone who cared. And then near the end, in that 3rd month, I found out that he doesn't date people after 3 months. He only goes for 3 months. And he is very judgmental of your personality, or sorry, your physical appearance. And so I would find, like, after we broke up, I was thinking about the relationship, and I was like, oh, weird. He would always tell me, like, to wear lipstick, or to not wear that jacket, or like, if I looked good, he would make sure I knew. If I didn't, he would also make sure I knew. And so it was very weird. And the way he broke up with me, he called me up and he's like, look, it's not going to work with us. You're just not hot enough for me. So yeah, that was what it was. I wasn't hot enough for him. That was how he was gauging it. And like, wow. I was so close with his family and his friends. Like, I was in his life, and he just said, nah, not hot enough. And then 2 years later, I actually found out that he came out of the closet and he is gay. So I was like, oh, of course, like, I'm never going to be hot enough for him. I'm not the same sex, so I'm not the right sex for him, so it wouldn't work. But it took me until seeing that I believed it every day. Like, I was like, oh, okay, he broke up with me for that reason. And I took that very personally, and it was hard.
Of course. Yeah. As the years have gone on, you know, up until where you are now, how has your dating evolved?
So my dating has been more of like, I want to find someone who's serious about a relationship. So I had dated a few people who were like, I just want to hang out. I don't want anything serious, because at that point I didn't really either. And then I wanted, you know, to settle down. Had this plan for myself. At 30, I would have 2 kids, a house I owned, a good job. Like, that was my idea. And meanwhile, I was 30 and I had none of it. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out what I want. So I realized I really wanted a family. And so I ended up finding someone who has 2 kids. So I became a stepmom, which is a whole game in itself. It's not for the faint of heart. It is hard. And I'm not discounting parents at all, but step parenting is just like a whole nother thing. So it ended up being I was trying to put myself into kids instead of a man. I felt like I had,
Wow.
yeah, right? Because I really wanted a child. I couldn't find someone I wanted to be with to have a child. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I can help these 2 kids. And they have had a tough past. Traumatic stuff has happened to them. And so I was like, perfect, I can be there for them. I can be their person. It's not as easy as that. And took it took me to a really dark place. Especially through COVID, living with everybody in the house, not leaving, working from home, homeschooling kids. It was a lot, and I ended up drinking and like a bottle a day, put on a ton of weight.
Wow.
Yeah, I pushed out all my friends, pushed out my family. I was in a really dark place. Like I was back to where I was when I was 16, and I wasn't thinking about hurting myself, but it was like, what am I doing? Like I want so much more for my life. It's like it was hard. And so like the beginning of this year, so January, I said, okay, enough is enough. I'm unhappy with myself, my home life, my body, my work, everything. And I ended up changing to a new company with my work, which has been the best thing I've done. And then I started focusing on me and doing the deep stuff. And I actually ended up writing a book through a lot of this stuff and what I've dealt with in the past. And it's in the process of being published, which is really
Yes.
cool. Yeah, I'm so excited. It's something I've wanted to do for so long and just never had the desire to sit there and do it. And COVID gave that to me. So I'm grateful for that piece. And then now I've been really just focusing on being happy and what does that look like and understanding that I'm allowed to love myself and I don't need to get that from anybody else except for me. And it's been a huge shift for me. I've lost 25 pounds.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've got more confidence back. I'm feeling like my feelings and words mean something. And I've stopped taking on other people's emotions and words and realized that they're not actually for me. They're just saying them and it's not meant to hurt me. So it's been a huge shift and change for me. And I actually started a podcast. It's called In Tune with Yourself. And basically, I talk about some of these topics. My most recent episode was about anxiety because I've suffered through that with a lot of the abuse in the past that has caused a lot of anxiety for me. And just like inspiring yourself and motivating yourself and just all the goodness. And my goal is just to help people and make them see that they're not alone and that there are other people going through similar things or have been and have gotten through it.
That's awesome. Absolutely awesome. If you had to take your life up to this point in the journey that you've been on, what would you say has been the biggest challenge you've had?
I think step parenting has been extremely hard. Even through all the abuse and stuff, I find that step parenting is a whole nother level of things. Like being a step parent, you have no rights. You really have no say. You have to help other people's kids who don't necessarily want you to help them. The kids themselves don't necessarily want you to help them. And I'm such a giver that it's like, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to help. And it's like, I've gotten into some situations where I've been a cause of some pain and that like my teenager, she ran away because she didn't like how I was running the house because I had rules. And as a teenager, no one wants rules. So It's been difficult, and it's one of those things where you are constantly stuck with them. So like we all live together, so there's nowhere to go. Whereas in a relationship, you feel stuck, but you can always, you have your space. Like, especially as a teenager, I lived at my parents' house, so like I had a place I could go.
Mm-hmm.
And I find as a step parent, for me especially, it feels wrong not being at home, like to be there for the kids and to support the house. And my partner, he works outside, so he's in the rain and he's in construction. So I try and take on the home life and make sure that that's all right. And some days is really hard. Some days I'm crying in the corner. Some days I'm so mad I have to leave the house. And it comes and goes. And it's hard because as a step parent, you don't really get the respect from the kids because you're not their parent. And so many people have probably seen movies or heard stories about their kids saying, well, you're not my mom, I don't have to listen to you. So it's challenging for sure.
I bet. How are you able to, so through the work that you've done, which obviously you've done a ton, how are you able to kind of mentally and emotionally deal with that? Like, what kind of steps have you gone through to really come into yourself and deal with that appropriately or maturely or healthy, as opposed to maybe how you would have?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of therapy in the last couple of years. And it's funny because going through the abusive relationships, you don't necessarily reach out for that support. I mean, I didn't. I don't want to say everyone does, but I just didn't feel like, how do I talk about this? And also like mental health and abuse weren't really talked about openly. So it was like, okay, just keep it all in, just bottle it up. It'll be okay. Just move on, forget about it. And it stays there.
Yeah.
And so therapy was a big one for me because it was getting me to ask the questions of like, why was I feeling this way? Did I see red flags? Like going through those kind of things. And then focusing on journaling. And growing up in those relationships, I loved to journal. However, I didn't tell the truth in my journal because I always felt like if I wrote down the truth of what was going on, it meant it was real. And I didn't want it to be real. I felt like it was just a dream, like, oh, he hurt me, but I'm not going to write it down because one, I don't want anyone to find it. Two, if I write it down, it's real.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
So
would do like,
interesting.
yeah. So I would do like the surface level stuff. I'd be like, today at school, this happened. Or Julie said this to me, like, the high level stuff, nothing deep. And definitely nothing that my parents were or anyone else was going to find. And especially like when I had my partner and I was writing in my journal, I didn't want them to find it as well because I didn't know what they would do if they did. So journaling now, my actual feeling has been a game changer. And also like, if I don't want anyone to find it, I'll just burn it, throw it in the garbage. Like, it's okay. It's good to get it out. And I was talking with someone the other day and we were talking about journaling. And it's like, you start off like, writing okay, like nice and pretty.
Yes.
And then you start getting into the emotion and then it gets angry and then it's like all over the place and then you can't read it. And it's like, you're just getting the emotion out.
Yes.
Yeah. And I find that really helps. And then meditation, which is something that I just didn't believe in at all up until this year. Well, the last year and two, I started, I have this app called Headspace. I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's been game changer for me. I just enjoy how there's like the little snippet ones where it's like 3 to 5 minutes, or you can do like a whole course on something, whether it's, a breakup or kindness or, there's a whole bunch of things on it. And it's just been phenomenal. Like, I like listening to people's voices to guide me through stuff. And that was huge. And then I guess the other piece has been finding something that makes me happy. So having that something means that, so for example, if I'm angry or hurt or frustrated and I can't shake that feeling, for me, my happiness is nature. So I'll go and hike or go for a walk or just get out and like deep breaths in the fresh air. And I find that doing that brings down any of those emotions, and then I can think straight. I also, like, nature is big for me. It's like hiking, paddleboarding, kayaking, like camping, really anything outdoors. But indoors, like even in the rain, like I'll go walk in the rain. But like indoors, I enjoy reading. So like I'll read a mystery book, and it just like takes me out of what's going on and puts me in the book, and I pretend like I'm one of the characters, or like I'm following along as though it's my story. And just having that distraction really, really helps to kind of diffuse everything, and to actually get to the point where you're like, okay, now that I'm calm, why did I react like that? What are my deep feelings? And just asking those questions of like, was I actually mad, or was I just scared, or was I sad, or was I resentful? Like just going through and asking myself, because I found I never checked in with myself. I never said, okay, body, how are we feeling? Like, are we happy? Are we sad? What is causing these things?
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And then I find that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm really sad right now. Why? Or like, how do we get out of this mode? Because sometimes, we're just sad for no reason. Like it just, like, the world feels heavy and we're just sad. So I'm like, okay, is this a thing we need to fix? Or is this something we just need to move on from? And, I let myself have the moments I need. So if I need to cry, I give myself, 15, 20 minutes, and then we figure it out. We move on. And I think just not dwelling in that place is huge, because that's where you spiral down and get into the drinking, get into the sadness, and it's not fun.
I love how you're talking to yourself as a team, because that's totally the way it is. It's like, we need to get ourselves together. We need to have time to cry. And that's because you have to take care of yourself. Your mind has to take care of your body. I've never really heard it like that, but I like how you're wording that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's been interesting, because sometimes, like, for example, I mean, if anyone's listening and they have a teenager, I'm sure they understand. The other day I was so mad, like I was just mad, and there was another emotion under there, and I was like, okay, I went into my room, I shut the door, I went and just sat on the ground, and I closed my eyes, and I did like 3 deep breaths, and I was like, okay, what are we gonna do here? And I was still feeling quite mad. Like I was like, oh, I'm shaking, like I'm just so mad. So I went and put on one of those 3-minute overwhelmed headspace episodes. It's 3 minutes, and you think that's not gonna do anything, but actually it does. It calms you down, because it gets you distracted and thinking about something else, like your breath, or how you're feeling, and that. And I was able to stop and then think, okay, is this something that I should actually be mad about, or is this out of my control? And a lot of it is learning what's in your control that you can change, and what is not in your control that you literally can't do anything about, except controlling how you're feeling. So just asking myself those things have been huge, and it feels weird sometimes, because sometimes I'll say it out loud, okay, what are we doing here? And then I listen to my body, and it's like, we're not happy. Okay, but why? And so it's been interesting to do that.
Absolutely. That's so great. There must be such a big difference between how you're thinking now and how you were thinking back when you were younger. What do you think are like the 2 biggest differences between like your 20-year-old mind and the mind that you have now?
So my 20-year-old mind was very set on finding someone who could complete me or give me the perfect life, because in my eyes, that was what I had to do. My parents got married at 1920. My grandparents got married at 1920, like very young.
Wow.
My sister had a partner that she basically had out of school, so she married him and still with him, and they have 2 kids now. And like I said before, I had this dream life of, a little house, of kids, a family, and everything. And I had focused so much on it, because I was like, okay, when you're young, you just need to find the person, you just need to get it done. And it wasn't like, do I want to be with this person for the rest of my life? Or am I just picking it because it's in front of me and I need this perfect life?
Yeah.
And so now I would say in that situation, my mind frame is now, okay, how do I make myself happy? because I have attracted people, men into my life who wanted to change me, who wanted to be more in love with themselves than with me, and they didn't want a partner. They wanted like a slave. And now I'm like, okay, well, I don't like this. I don't want that. This is what I want. And it's really being able to sit with myself and understand that I may be alone, and that's okay. It's okay not to have that life that other people have. And that's, again, I compared myself to everyone in my 20s. That would be probably the other thing. I compared myself to everyone and everything. And that's where I got to the point where I was like, oh, my life isn't good. I'm not good like them. I don't have it good like them. And now it's like, cool, like they're doing this, they're doing that. And I'm more of a cheerleader for them. Like, I'll be like, oh, congratulations, that's so great. And I actually mean it. Where people will say it and they'll be like, oh my God, this person. But I actually want to uplift people and not compare myself. I mean, we're all human, and I find that I do sometimes compare myself, but it's usually like, oh, I wish I had that, not, oh, I'm jealous of that, or, and in social media, we only know what people show us, and it's usually the good side of things, not the bad. So I've really learned that it's okay to be alone. It's okay to be with yourself. And it's actually better to work on yourself and love yourself, because if you love yourself, you're going to attract someone who loves you for you and doesn't want to change you.
Exactly. 100%. So I'm certain that everyone watching right now live and those that are going to be watching on the replay are getting some real inspiration from everything that you've said. I think that you're so relatable in so many different ways, especially the young female mind, the people pleasing mind. I'd like for you to kind of share some actionable steps. So, I can tell that you've done a ton of work, you're talking about the meditation and stuff that you've done, but can you kind of share just some real actionable steps that you took to kind of help yourself get stronger mentally, to kind of give us an idea as to maybe what, what we should be doing if we're in a similar situation to what you're talking about here? What were some of the things that you actually did?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing is finding someone who you can talk to if you're in the situation to get the support you need. And it's not like a friend who's going to be like, oh yeah, just leave the situation. Like a professional, because they can help you. That's where my journey started, was asking for help. I'm not a big asking for help person. I do it myself, or I don't do it at all. So asking for help just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. But in the situation, if you're in the middle of it, asking for help. And if you're not in the middle of it, still ask for help, because you probably haven't dealt with what happened in the past. And it'll just keep pulling into your future relationships. The next thing that was huge for me was a morning routine. And I say this because I hated morning. I was not a morning person. However, I was not a morning person because I was unhappy with my life and I didn't want to wake up to deal with life. Yeah. So morning was a problem for me because I wasn't happy when I woke up. I'd be like, oh, great. What's going to happen today? And starting your day off with that mind frame is the worst thing you can do, because it will happen. Whether you think it will happen as a bad day or a good day, it's going to happen how you think it. So a lot of it was changing my mindset and saying, okay, you know what? Everyone tells me mornings are the best time to wake up and start your day and get ready. And so I would always wake up like 10 minutes before I need to leave. Like, that's how much I hated waking up, was I'd literally make it to the last point. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit to this. And a lot of what I found was reading books, like personal development books, self-help books, self-love books, and podcasts were the two areas where I learned so much to then feel like I wasn't alone, to then go and do the morning routine. And so my morning routine is like, I'll wake up and I'll put on my meditation from Headspace. So if I'm in a course, because they do like 10 to 30 day courses, so each day is like 10 to 15 minutes, and you pick the theme. And so I'll start my day with that. So I'll wake up, I'll put on my meditation for 10 minutes, and then I'll get up, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth so I feel fresh, then go make a coffee, and then I'll pull out my journal. And in my journal, I have a couple of prompts. So the first one is, I love and appreciate ... And you pick 5 things that you love and appreciate. And it can be anything. It can be that you have fuzzy socks, that it's sunny out, that you have coffee, that you woke up, like it really anything. And you pick 5 of them. And then the next line down, you do, wouldn't it be nice if ... And in this area, I put the 3 things that I really want to accomplish in the day. If I accomplish those 3 things in the day, then I feel really good. I'm like, okay, I got those 3 things done. Then the next one is the same question, wouldn't it be nice if ... But these 3 things are 3 things you want the universe to do for you. So a lot of this is like, I'll put in here, like, I hope that I have a really stress-free day. Or I hope that I get some good news today. Or, it doesn't have to be super specific for the universe. It can be if you want. I usually go a bit broader. It's usually like, I hope I win something today, or I hope money comes into my account today. But it's like, it's interesting because if you go back at night and take a look and say, oh yeah, I did that, I accomplished this. And it's kind of like a to-do list in a way. And then I've added in, I rank my energy because I found that my energy was very low. And so I ranked it so I could see like what was happening. Why was my energy so low that day? And then the next day it's so high. And so I could see throughout my day and go back and see what was going on. And then I write down my mood. And sometimes I'll just give it a number like 6 out of 10, or sometimes I'll just write out how I'm feeling word wise, or like put in like a description of what I'm feeling. And then I am grateful for ... And I just keep writing until I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good. Like it's filling up my cup. So those are kind of the prompts that I do there. And then I will get a book that I'm reading. It can be personal development. It can be, mystery, whatever. And I'll spend, depends how much time I have, 15 to 30 minutes reading in the morning. And usually that's about my hour that I have dedicated to me. So I try and do it so that it's before when everyone's up, or, if my partner goes to work and the kids don't have to get up for an hour, then I spend that time doing it. I just find that when I don't do this morning routine, it throws off my whole day. Like, it's crazy the difference it's made. And I've done it, I'd say not every day, but majority of the days. There's been, like 1 day a week I sometimes don't get the chance to do it because everybody's home and in my bubble. And so it's and then I make sure I move my body once a day, whether it's a walk, whether it's a workout, whether it's yoga, whatever it is. I just find getting that movement, and I usually do it in the middle of the day because that's when I'm finding I'm a bit sluggish, and I'm like, okay, let's get this mood back up. And a lot of that is because I enjoy nature, or like, the after workout feeling of, oh my God, I'm so tired, but that felt so good.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So those are kind of the things that I do that has really helped me. And it's like, I bought this book, so it's called Unlimited by Zyra. I can't remember her last name, but you can get it on Amazon. It's called Unlimited, and it's got like the infinity symbol. And that's where I got those prompts from. And then there's some other things, like you do a morning and nighttime check-in, so you do 40 days of that. And that's what I did at first. I went through that book. And so I was doing morning and night check-ins, and it was a huge shift in my mindset and like how I was feeling, because I was checking in with myself and saying, okay, how was today? Did we accomplish what we wanted to? Are we feeling better than we did in the morning? Like, it was a way to really just check in and remind myself, like, hey, let's check in with myself today. And I have a hard time with like habits, like just starting them. Like I find I forget them, or life gets busy and I'm like, oh, I'll just do it tomorrow.
Mhm.
But I have this app on my phone that tracks my habits. And so it'll say like I'll have a list of the things I want to do every day. So it's like drink water, move my body, read, do my certain prompts in my journal. And I'll go in and I'll check it off. And then I get like money. Well, it's not real money, but in the game,
Yeah.
money and like points, and like you could move up levels. And it's kind of like, I'm not a big video game person, but it's similar to that where you're trying to get up levels, and it just, you can go and join parties and you do challenges together and you get animals, and it's really cool. It's called Habitica. And yeah, it's great. I found it very easy to keep on track when I was checking off, oh, I've done that, because some days I find in the morning I don't get it done. So then I make sure by lunchtime I have it done. Otherwise it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So.
I'm like that too. I try to get everything done in the morning because anything you
Mhm.
leave for afternoon, I'm just so busy and overwhelmed with my day.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love everything that you said. And it's such a great reminder because there's so many times just in my life in general where I'm doing things habitually and you kind of start to wonder or slip and think like, is this really like, couldn't I be just as good, if I didn't, take this extra time to do, such and such. So it's such a great reminder to hear you say like, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between the days that I do it and the days that I don't do it. And I certainly hope that the individuals that are watching now or on the replay took some notes during that or rewatch it because there is some really good content in there. I appreciate that. Looking at your life now, how do you decide to show up for your world now?
Uh, well, I have new affirmations. So I've been adding affirmations and mantras into my daily life, which I also did not believe in for the longest time. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's just try it. Because I find for me, I need to try it to know if I actually can do it or if I like it or if it works. I don't like to take people's opinions and say like, "Oh, this really works," or "This doesn't work," because everybody is so different.
Yeah.
And for what works for one person doesn't for the other. So I try to try the things first before judging them. And so um my affirmation or mantra right now is, I am free to be me. And because I always felt like I couldn't be myself fully. And so I'll say that to myself in the morning. I'm free to be me. And I feel like, okay, I don't have to hide. I can just be me. And it's okay if people don't like me. It's okay if I annoy people, or, because I think I'm really funny and I don't normally like share that with everyone. And so I usually laugh at my own jokes, and like, I just think I'm hilarious when I want to be. And a lot of people don't see that. And it makes me sad because laughter is so good for the soul. And
Yes.
it just takes away from the bad. And so I try now to show up and be like, okay, it's okay. Like if I want to have a dance party in the kitchen, I don't care if the kids judge me. Like I feel good. So it's showing up for myself is what it is, and being okay with myself. And I can say for most of my life I was not. I hated myself for because other people filled that in my head. And then I realized that I'm actually a pretty cool person, and people deserve to see that. And I think when you have the right people around you, then you can be yourself. And so through the years, I've really changed who I keep close to me. And going through this process, I lost friends because I wasn't the person who would just agree with everything and do everything they wanted. And I started to have my own opinions and know that it's okay if it's different than everyone else's. And it's okay to ask questions if things don't make sense. And I've just had a lot of opportunities that have pushed me out of my scared bubble. And I said, okay, you know what? Let's just do it. And for example, like my podcast, I wanted to do a podcast for so long. I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. And then I was like, nah, no one wants to hear me. Why would anyone want to listen to me? Like, I got nothing good to say. And it took me 9 months to get it done. And I almost didn't launch it on my first day. And I had a friend talk to me because I went to people who were close to me who didn't agree with it. And so then they put doubt in my head. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Too many people are going to judge me or they're not going to listen. And I put in the what ifs and the negative talk. And I spoke to my life coach. And he was like, okay, so what happens if you don't do this? What if you just say, screw it, I'm not going to post it? I said, well, then nobody will hear it and I won't be able to help anyone. And it'll feel like a failure. And he's like, okay, so what if you do it? What's the worst thing that's going to happen? I said, well, maybe one person listens to it. And he's like, okay, I don't see the bad. Like, I'm not getting it. And he's like, just do it. Just do it. And I was like, okay. So I did it. I posted it and I left it alone. I walked away and I was like, oh, I don't want to know. I'm just going to post it. Here we go. We're just going to walk away. The next day, I got so many messages from people saying, I listened to your podcast. I love how you speak. You sound so calm. Like, you sound so happy. And like, I didn't ask for these people to tell me what they felt. And I actually had people reach out and say, oh my goodness, like do you want some advice? And I said, of course, because those people who asked were like friends and I knew they weren't going to be like, this is shit. So it was good. It was like, here's some tips. And I'm like, perfect. And I took them, like, because I'm always one, if you're going to offer me advice and it's going to help me, then I'm going to take it. I'm not just going to be like, oh, it's your advice, I don't want to hear it. It's like, I like to hear what people say, but I've learned that I don't necessarily have to agree with what they say, and that's okay. So
that's awesome. I love that. There's so many people that have so many dreams and so many desires that they're sitting on, and the lack of action, you know?
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me was I had like a New Year's. I was like, yes, I have all these goals and like a bucket list of what I wanted to accomplish through the year. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make this poster board of what I want to do. And then I'm going to post it in my office so I see it every day. And I was like, yes, this is great. I'm going to stay on task and this is great. Well, I posted it and then I like looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this is never going to happen. And like some of the things are pretty big on it. And so I was like, this is never going to happen. And I put a lot of doubt in my head. And then in the summertime, I was like, oh crap, this year's ending. Like this last 6 months has flown by. I told myself I was going to do this. I need to get on it. And excuse me. So I spent the time going through and saying, what can I actually accomplish this year? What can wait till next year? And what is going to light me up? Like, what is going to make me feel like, okay, even though I didn't do everything, I really got to do the things I wanted to do. And so having that reminder in front of you is like a push, because I see now that if you never write it down, you never have a goal, you just have these dreams, but you never actually do anything with them, then they're just going to stay dreams and they're not actually going to become reality or goals to work towards. And so having that in front of you is a reminder of like, okay, you said you wanted to do this, so let's do it.
Yes. What other big plans do you have coming up? Business, personal, what do you got going on?
Well, I'm hoping to go traveling again. I mean, I love that, and with COVID, it's caused some issues. So I'm hoping to get to Costa Rica in the next year. That's my personal goal. And I'm going to have my book published it'll be in the spring of 2022. And I just want to grow a community, and I want to like have people to like uplift and support and just grow that and feel that there's people who need help and that I'm providing them with some support. And I mean, I'm not by any means a psychologist or anything like that. I'm just me and going off personal experiences. But one thing that has come up for me, because I've let the universe kind of give me the things I need to fill up my cup, is I've joined this collective of women. So there's 4 of us, and my friend, she decided to build this beautiful sacred space with a geodome, which is in the middle of her forest. And it's just this beautiful geodome with like a window out into the forest, and we're hosting events and stuff there.
Wow.
And so yeah, it's really amazing. Like there's yoga and there's breath work and there's just all these healers who have come into my life, and I'm just so grateful for them. And so next year I'm hoping to do my own retreat for people for like a mental reset. So I'm pretty excited to focus on that. So I'm going to be doing a facilitator course and learning how to help people in person, not just through a podcast or a book or, you know, social media, but actually in person and dig deep and help some people.
I love that. Charmin said, I feel very inspired by everything she is sharing. I'm so glad I tuned in today.
Oh, yay. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes. So listen, I appreciate you taking the time. I know, you've got a gazillion other things going on in your life. So I appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate you sharing, some of your journey and what you've been through and how you've gotten to the place that you are now. For those that are listening now live, or for those that are going to be listening on the replay, I know for certain that there's women that are struggling. There's
Mhm.
females that are struggling right now and who share very similar stories to you. What would be some advice that you'd give to the woman right now who is going through some real challenges in their life and they're feeling just defeated, just absolutely defeated? What would you tell them?
That it's okay to not be okay, and that the best thing you can do for yourself is to acknowledge that you're not okay and that you need help. And help can be in many ways. One thing I would recommend is getting a journal. Just go to the store, grab a journal, grab a favorite pen, and just write it out. And one thing that can help is if there's a specific thing. So, say, I'll give the example of, say, you're struggling with drinking, because that was something that I struggled with. Not going to the bottle and being like, okay, I'm just going to have this drink to feel better, and depending on it. If you write a letter to that thing, so alcohol, you can say, Dear alcohol, and then just spit out everything you want to say to that and just like swear, do whatever you need to do. And angry, right? Like, you don't have to reread it. And when you're done, crumple it up and burn it. It feels so good to burn it safely, please. Um, and then I would say Pinterest, get Pinterest if you don't have Pinterest, and get a board going for affirmations and quotes and things that make you feel good. Like you can even have like a happiness board, and you put like, if you like dogs, put puppies on it. Like do whatever you need to do to visually see something. So when you're upset, you can go there. And then get a meditation app. A lot of them are free. Headspace is free. You can buy the annual membership, which I highly recommend, but the free version has just as many good tidbits in there. And then just know you're not alone. So finding podcasts about the topic that you're struggling with, or finding books that call to you. Like I'll go into a bookstore and I'll literally stare at the self-help wall and I'll scan it and be like, what book is popping out to me right now? And then I'll pick it up and I'll read it and I'll be like, yes, or no, I'm not dealing with that right now. So it gives you somewhere to look for support. And there are a lot of like Facebook groups and stuff, but honestly, I would say stay away from them. Go inside you first and just write it out. Write your feelings out. When you've got all your feelings out, then write what you want to do with your life, your dreams, your goals. Because if you're thinking about the future, that's a good sign. It means you're moving forward. If you're stuck in the past and you aren't thinking about your future, then that's where it gets scary and can go into depression and, suicidal thoughts and that. And we don't want that for anybody. So thinking about the future, whether it feels accessible or not, dream big. Dream big. Because if you dream big, then you're going to be able to focus on those good things to get you to that dream. If you dream small, if you're like, say you're renting like I am, and you're like, okay, my goal is to just get a trailer and have a spot on some land. But that's not really what you want. That's just like, okay, I think I can make that happen. But if you're like, I want this beautiful cabin on a lake with a dock down to the water, like if you're thinking about this and manifesting this, that's what you'll get. Yeah. And I know that sounds hokey, and I always was like, manifesting, really? Like, it's never going to happen. But it does for people. You just have to believe it. And even if it doesn't feel true, it can still happen.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I love everything that you're saying. And I'm so excited for everything that you have going on. And I certainly hope with everything that you've been talking about, I certainly hope that you'd be willing to come on to this podcast again at some point in the future and
Definitely.
share all of the new things that you're doing, and how far you've come since the last time we talked. I think that that would be a great follow-up for us to
Definitely.
do. Do you have any well, first of all, what's your podcast?
So my podcast it's called In Tune with Yourself, and it's a mental wellness podcast. You can listen to it pretty much anywhere: Spotify, Apple Tunes, or iTunes, or whatever. There's 6 different platforms you can listen to it. And I have the podcast has an Instagram account, so it's just In Tune with Yourself podcast, and that way, if you go in there, it's got my link to go to the actual podcast.
So if they just Google, or not Google, but if they put in the search in any one of those, In Tune with Yourself,
Yeah,
it'll pop up.
Yeah, and it's just a picture of a girl kind of in nature. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that is great. I so appreciate you coming on here and everything that you shared with us. This has been phenomenal. Do you have any closing thoughts before I close up?
I just hope that someone listening can realize they're not alone. I mean, it sounds like lots of people can resonate, which is what I wanted. And just, if you're ever feeling alone, you can reach out to me. I've been there. Finding people who have been through it can actually help you get through it yourself. It's hard when you're with people who are going through the same thing, but if you find someone who's been through it, or gotten through it and risen above, finding that support on how they did it can also help. And just reaching out for help. You're not alone. And no matter what, I will say that someone is always worse off than you, so you can get through it. And I know you can, because I did. So, and lots of people do. So yeah, you're not alone.
Yes, 100%. And this podcast, if you're just tuning in now, I see a few more people just joined last minute. We're just closing up right now. However, if this topic is resonating with you, this podcast will be up and uploaded on YouTube within the next 24 hours. And Ashely's information, her Instagram, and her podcast will be listed in the description. So, go to YouTube, go to the Her Version podcast, and all of her information will be listed. And then Ashely, if you want to, underneath the Facebooks, if you want to, put whatever contact information in the thread underneath, so anyone that wants to reach out to you can message you if they want to. But this has been great. This has been great. Thank you again so much for taking some time. Thank you for everyone who is listening. I always encourage sharing. So if this podcast resonated with you and you feel as if it will touch somebody else, if you have people in your life who are dealing with some challenges, I highly recommend you to share this podcast and give some females in your circle some hope. Sometimes it's just listening to the right person at the right time that can really alter and change someone's future. So that's what we're trying to do here on the Her Version podcast, is inspire and uplift others. So thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here or at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. Do something awesome today. Much love.